All right, everybody, good afternoon. So this is the Monday edition of our Chapter 9 review. This is the second one that you should receive from me on Monday, February 25th. If you do not have this version, then take notes, please, as you're going along with it, in case you missed class today, because I did have quite a few students that missed. So just be aware that this review looks similar to the test, okay? So that was the main reason we did this. A lot of the stuff you could technically use Desmos for, so I'm not going to go over too much of those areas, just so that you guys, I'm going to cover those briefly. So for example, number one here, ladies and gentlemen, which of the following could be used to solve for Desmos? Okay, I'm not going to go over this. You could easily do what? Which of the following could be an equation for shown below? You could go into Desmos and answer the number one, okay? Compare the picture, whatever looks close. Number two, the quadratic function, okay? Talks about this is your vertex. With this point here being your vertex, you need to make sure you guys understand your vertex is 8, 10. Okay, so what it talks about is a vertex, you guys remember, okay, if it's 8, 10 on my function, I'd be 8 over 10 up, I'd be right about here. And then according to these, what happens is as it goes right and left, it starts to go down. Okay, so a vertex, what it means is you have one point here at the top, which would be right here, and then after that, every point will be the same. So these 2 points are going to be 8, the next 2 points would be 5 and 5. If I were to take my graph one more out to 11, I know my next point would be 0. Okay, beyond that, I don't have anything on the table, so I know one of my intersections here would be 5 and then it would be 11. You kind of mix it up. So remember, symmetry. Axis of symmetry is right here in the middle, splits the line in half, and then it's everything from the left and the right side is actually going to be the exact same. That's why it's called axis of symmetry. All right, solve these equations. Multiple things can be done. You guys could use completing the square if you want. You could do a bunch of different things. I'm going to factor these out. Remember, it's A times C over B, and then this would be what two numbers multiply and what add. Okay, this is factoring that we did. So A1 times -7 is -7 and 6. So what two numbers multiply and add? 7 minus 1. So x plus 7, and then it's x minus 1 equals 0. Don't forget that last piece, because you want the solution. So the solution for this would be x equals, and then what number would you put in here to make this 0? Well, it would be -7 here, and then what number would you put in there? X minus 1 equals 0. It would be 1. Sorry, that's a bad 7. So -7 and 1. You could answer this using Desmos as well, but if I ask you to show you work, then you have to do it. Now, the test that we're going to take for this part 1 is going to be multiple choice. Okay, so don't worry about that. Quadratic expression, same way. All right, 24 up here. 10 down here. Then, ladies and gentlemen, what two numbers would they be? Be 6 and 4. And your answers would be -6, -4. Okay? Went really quick, but it's kind of simple. We've been doing factoring like this for a while. I wanted to make sure. Number 5. Okay? If you guys want to look at this, the problem I have is that if I were to look at this, can I do a simple factoring? So what number here would multiply to make 2, and when you add it, they make 4? It's not going to work, okay? So that equation is not going to work because it's not going to be a whole number, so we got to use the quadratic formula, okay? The quadratic formula is -b, so it's x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, okay? And then it's all divided by 2 times a. Okay, so all you do, ladies and gentlemen, is you find your A, your B, and your C value, and you plug it in. So on this one right here, A equals 1, B equals 4, C equals 2. Then you just plug it in. So let's work on this formula. So -4 plus or minus, draw the square root. As you see it left to right, draw it out. Okay, 4 squared, 16, minus 4, times 1 times 2 all over 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, big reason we had talked about this. We're going to work a lot of these after the test on Thursday, because this is kind of the beginning of more complicated formulas that you will encounter within Algebra 2. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the simple thing to do in Algebra 2. So I want to make sure you guys understand the context of what you're going to be approaching as you move along in high school. Now you just transcribe -4 and simplify, plus or minus. And it's going to be 16 minus. So this is -4 times 1, which is -4 times 2, -8, all over 4. Then you go one more time, like this. And ladies and gentlemen, there is your answer. Now, some of you, I'm going to take this down a little farther, okay? This is technically not as far as you can go. You can actually take this one a little bit farther down. But for order of reasons of making sure you guys understand today's lesson, okay, just know that if I were to ask you to stop at the first level, that would be it. But technically, what I would want you to think about is, if I have the square root of 8, can you take a perfect square out of it? A perfect square would be 4. Yes, it does. What's left behind is 2. Okay, so knowing that technically speaking, I'm going to rewrite this right here. You would start here, -4 plus or minus square root of 8 over 4. And we're going to break it into two pieces. So it's going to be plus or minus square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Okay, because that's what we talked about right here. You can multiply that out. And then you would simply solve it. -4 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 2 all over 4. Oh, dang it, this whole time I've been putting 4. That's not right. Sorry. It's 2. So hopefully you guys caught it and realized halfway through that I made a mistake. Okay, so this is 2. Sorry. It would be 2 times 1 is 2. This is 2, and that's 2. Sorry, I made a mistake. 2, 2, and 2. Okay, so knowing that's your final answer. See, even I make mistakes. Can you simplify this one more time? The answer, of course, would be yes. 4 divided by 2 is -2. These would cancel each other out as well, so it would be plus or minus the square root of 2. That, ladies and gentlemen, would technically be your final answer. Okay, so make sure you guys go along and you don't make the mistake like I did and accidentally go 2 times 2, because it's actually supposed to be 2 times 1, which brings the 2 across the board. Okay, but we simplify it out. That would be, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're going to push for when we get farther on down the line with with our algebra skills this year. 6, solve for perfect square. I've already talked about completing the square. Okay, remember, completing the square is you take the b, divide it by 2, and then you square that answer. So this would be 6 divided by 2, which is 3. You square that, you get 9. So my answer here would be x squared plus 6x. And this is when you add your answer to both sides. Okay, so I add those. Then you can factor. So 9 and 6, what two numbers add and then multiply? It would be 3 and 3. And we don't write x plus 3 and then x plus 3, right? X plus 3 squared. And that's what the answer will look like on the test, something similar to that. Okay. Number 7, determine the solution set of this equation. Well, I know, ladies and gentlemen, that technically this is a square root and square root. And if you do that, it's going to be x minus 9, x plus 9 equals 0. So I know my x's are -9 and 9. Is there an easier way to do it? Yeah, you could possibly do it in Desmos. And speaking of Desmos, that was another thing I talked about on 6. If you guys don't know how to do complete the square, you could, given on a multiple choice test, okay, put this answer into Desmos, and if you do with the 0, it's going to give you 2 straight lines. So this would be your graph. This is what it's going to look like. Okay, so it's going to look like this, and then it's going to give you 2 straight lines. So your answer would be something like this and this. Okay. And then your answer has to come about as all you're doing is you're going to take this answer here and you're going to match up with what you find here. Okay, so your example, for example, you put this in and then your line 2, equation 2 would be answer A. So it'd be maybe x plus 2 squared equals 13. You type it in. And if, ladies and gentlemen, when you type it in, you get lines that look like this, then you know that they are not the same ones. You want to wait until the lines are parallel and actually would have infinite solutions where they're on top of each other. Okay, so just be aware of that setup. Number 8, which of the following functions has a graph of the vertex where it transitions 6 units horizontally to the left? Okay, so if we're going left, we know that's going to be a negative number of some sort. All right, I also know from the top of my head from what we talked about before that this is actually going up and this is actually going down. You can go in Desmos and ask and you see it. So it's not B or D. Then the question becomes, is it A or is it C? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the original function is supposed to be x minus h squared. If it's x minus h and you know you're going -6, which one of these two is it going to be? It's going to be C. Please put it in Desmos and double check. Okay? Write the following equation in vertex form. Okay, what I wanted to do is make sure I showed you guys, I can show you the easier way, the more complicated way to do it, which is x squared minus 8x, okay, and then it's going to be plus something, and then it's going to be 10 minus something. And then we would do the same thing with completing the square, right? So it's 8 divided by 2 is 4. You'd square that, you'd get 16. And so our numbers in here would be 16 and 16. So when you're doing this, okay, you would now take the square of this. And if I do the 16 here and a -8, what two numbers are they going to be? It's going to be this. So I know I got x minus 4 squared, and then 10 minus 16 is -6. There's vertex form of the equation. Let me show you the trick I showed you guys in class. All right, we already know that's the answer. Let me show you the faster and kind of the little trick with that too. On Desmos, okay, if you guys were to enter it in, so it's x squared minus 8x, x squared minus 8x, and then it is plus 10. All right, we have our setup here. One thing you can do is look and find your vertex. So our vertex is 4, -6. So what you would want to do now is go back to your lesson here and let's write this out. Vertex is 4, -6. All right, we have that. In the vertex form equation, okay, this equation is actually written the parent function. So let me erase this. Parent function is actually written like this, where it's f of x equals, and then it's going to be x minus h, you square it, and then it's plus k. Okay, that is your actual setup of your equation. Now the question I have for you guys is, how does it actually work in parallel to this? So your vertex, when you write this out, okay, is actually going to be hk. That's what the same form is. So my h value is actually the x value in the vertex, and my k is actually the y. So knowing this, I could actually not graph this, not do this math on it, but I could actually write it out, x minus 4, square it, and then it's going to be, and I got the exact same thing as I got there. So one last example. If, let's say, your vertex, okay, say it was -3 and 7. All right, you would write this out as f of x equals x. Now it's negative, so if it's negative and it's supposed to be negative right here, negative and negative would be a positive right here, squared, and then it's going to be plus 7 because it's a positive value. So those two things correlate. It's just another example because I want to make sure you guys understand what the vertex form is and how it looks. Okay. Number 10, if the quadratic function is graphed below of f of x, describe which of the following of g of x is the correct equation. Well, first off, we know if it reflects over the x-axis that it's a negative number. So it cannot be this one, and it cannot be this one. Then we have to know, ladies and gentlemen, see how it balloons out or has more horizontal stretching? If it has a horizontal stretch, then that means it's between 0 what number is that? It's this one. You could technically graph it as well. If you graph it, you would see how this one, it would end up being a skinnier functionality. Okay, if you graph this one right here, okay, you would get an upside down graph that's skinnier, so that would not be the right one. All right, number 11, which of the following represents the vertex of the function? Well, it's the same thing we had talked about. Vertex, okay, is your h, k, and in this formula is supposed to be a x minus h squared plus k. So what is my vertex? I don't even have to graph it. I could just look straight up at it and know that my vertex for this problem, as a matter of fact, is h, okay, which would be 2, but it's supposed to be negative, so that'd be negative 2, and then this would be 9, so it'd be, there's your value right there, okay? If you guys have any questions on that vertex, technically you could graph it, but know that that setup is correct. Determine the range of the function. Well, if I know that I'm at negative 2, negative 9, okay, then that means I know on my graph that my point is going to be over negative 2, down negative 9, somewhere down here. I know without graphing this, ladies and gentlemen, that this positive number means the graph goes like this. Okay, if it's negative, a negative goes the other way down. So if I know it goes like this, okay, I missed the mark on that. I know my range is going to be y is greater than or equal to, that's going to be one of those questions, ladies and gentlemen, where there's going to be nothing given to you, and you have to tell me the range by looking at it, okay? It's a hit or miss. Please make sure you know the range. 13, state the vertex of this graph, axis of symmetry. So this vertex is going to be 2, and then if I look, it's 6. Now it's every 2, so 4, 6, 8. So this would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's my vertex. Axis of symmetry is always the x value. X equals 2. My zeros on this are the same as what would be written. So it'd be so it'd be negative 1. So it's 1, 2, so every other one. And the other one would be 5. So there are my zeros. And then solve the following quadratic equation. So same thing. Add 20, let's add, so we're going to solve this, see if we can figure this out. Okay? Add 12 to both sides. All right, when we add 12, we get x squared minus 9x plus 22 equals 0. From that point, we're going to use the quadratic formula. All right, there's the quadratic formula. My a value for this one is, a is 1, b is negative 9, c is 22. Then you fill everything in, right? So negative and negative is going to be positive. And this is going to be 81 minus 4 times 1 times 22. And then that's all over, don't make that mistake again, 2. All right, then we rewrite it, okay? So you would just multiply these out. So it'd be 9 plus or minus square root of 81 minus, and that would be 4 times 22 is 88, all over 2. And when you reduce that one last time, it's going to be 9 plus or minus negative 7 over 2. So ladies and gentlemen, when you see a negative pop up in this graph, can you do this? The answer is actually no. So the answer for this would be no solution. No solution, if you wrote it up, would be half credit. You want to get full credit for this, ladies and gentlemen, you got to show me how you got there to this point. Okay, that's what I need to see, that you can do this. Why do I know it's no solution? Technically speaking, if I graph it in Desmos, okay, you get the same setup and answer. So it would be x squared minus 9x, and then I'm going to go plus 22. So it's going to be, let me change this to 9x, and then this is going to be plus 22. Ladies and gentlemen, no solution because it never comes down and crosses the x-axis. So there is no solution for x. That is it. Might be one more modification I may make to the test in reference to domain, but you guys remember domain is all real numbers. Okay, so keep note of that. If you have any questions or problems, come see me. Okay, be ready to take the test on Tuesday and then part 2 on Wednesday. And if you're not ready for it, then I apologize, but you're still going to take it anyways. In the meantime, have a great day, and I'll see you guys soon.